The Shep Naz Podcast begins now.
Welcome to the Shep Naz Podcast. I'm Joe, and I'm your host today. And today we have with us Johnstown's campus pastor, Nick Shaner. And this past Sunday, we had kind of a new exciting chapter in the life of our Johnstown campus. So we wanted to welcome Nick in and kind of talk about that and some of the things that are happening there and some things we have planned. So welcome in.
Awesome. Thanks.
How's the baby and the family?
Everyone's great. Everyone's great. Do I look more awake this time?
I think you are. You're a little more rested, a little more refreshed. Are you learning how to fake it better, or is it actually happening?
Yes. Literally last night was a little tough. He had a couple hours stretched there in the 3 to 4:30 time slot. So, yeah.
All right.
We're making it.
Well, naps will be your friend in the future.
Yeah. Unless he's like Larkin. Larkin didn't take naps.
Well, I meant naps for you.
Oh, naps. Wow.
Would be your friend.
That's what everyone tells us. Like, well, you just can nap when your kid naps. I'm like, well, what if your kid doesn't nap?
Well, yeah. And there's no guarantee that they sync up even if they are napping. So, yeah.
We'll make it.
All right. So this past Sunday was kind of exciting. Tell us a little bit about what happened.
Yeah. So it was kind of our official, unofficial grand opening. That's not really what we called it. We called it All Things New Sunday. It was really what we were advertising in the community as our opening Sunday in our new remodeled, renovated space. So that took place. It was great. It was packed house. We had several people come. We sent out mailers again this time, just advertising, and had probably about 4 or 5 people show up from those mailers, and that was great. And it was just all around a great Sunday of just not only being in the new space, which that was kind of the big. Everyone has been excited about that, me included. It was been a long journey, so just to be able to finally begin to worshiping in that space was great. But we were also celebrating just what God was doing and is doing in his people, through his people. So it was just a Sunday of celebration in a lot of different ways. It was great. We had a couple baptisms. I'm sure some of you might have seen that on our social medias. And I love baptisms. Baptisms are just awesome to be a part of and to really celebrate God's work in a person's life. And so that was always cool.
Well, and it was such a great bookend for Dale, who has for years and years been helping with setting up and tearing down every single Sunday. And his testimony that you shared, where he was baptized as a child, but never really felt like he got to have a testimony himself of baptism. And so this first Sunday, when we're kind of finally into our new home, for him to be able to get baptized, it was just a great God-sighting moment there. Yeah,
for sure. It was just awesome being able to. I mean, I've only been here since August, and which has almost been a year now.
Yeah,
crazy
believe it or not,
think.
already.
But just over this past almost year, just getting to know the people and their heart, and it's just kind of a cool, like, hey, being able to share in that moment. And like you said, they've many of the Johnstown people have been setting up and tearing down for a long time. Actually, before this kind of grand opening, we were in the new space a couple Sundays just as kind of run through practice, make sure
we get everything worked out.
Yeah, make sure everything turns on and works how it's supposed to. And we're getting there.
Yep.
But the first couple of Sundays, a few of the folks are like, "What do we need to pack up, Pastor Nick?" I'm like, "Nothing.
Just close the door."
So just go home, go to lunch, just go wherever you want.
Yeah.
Get out of here. You just go home. So it was just funny. But so it's just cool to finally to be able to worship in there and not have that to worry about, the setup and tear down, and just be able to come in and serve in different ways now. That's why I told people leading up to this, saying, hey, just because there's not this aspect of serving, there's going to be other areas to step up and serve. And so that's really what I've been communicating leading up to this is that sometimes with more permanent space and a building comes like complacency and content. Like,
Right.
oh, cool, we've kind of, there's this attitude of, we can kind of relax now and we've arrived and yeah, it's kind of nice. I said, we've got to be intentional about pushing back on that because it is very real to, you just kind of get in the routine of showing up on Sunday morning, singing songs, praying, listening to a message, and then going home. And then that just becoming the rhythms. And like, that's not, like, if that's the case, we'll go back to the school, you know?
Right.
But to keep an attitude and a attitude of servanthood and an outward focus is really key, especially during this part of new space and more permanent. So that's what we're trying to be intentional about right now.
Well, and for so many years, there's just been so much energy spent on just trying to keep it going. Mm-hmm. And so now we have the opportunity to like, okay, let's start seeing what God can do to build this.
Yeah,
and
kind of get your footing a little bit.
Yeah.
That's what language I've kind of used too, is like, this is really a launching point for us being in a new space. Is like, okay, it's not just come and get cozy. It's like, okay, now let's really jump into what God has for us.
Yeah.
And that's not just showing up on Sunday and leaving. Like, it's part of it.
So some of the things, that have been happening over the past few months, even while we were dealing with getting the building ready and all that kind of stuff,
It's a nice way of saying it.
back when we did the big serve, we were very active up in Johnstown. We were doing mulching in a couple of the parks in the area. You've been making some contacts, and so have other people in the church been making contacts with people in the community. And recently, it's not been too long ago, there was a parade. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's a big thing. Apparently, all this stuff is new to me, but the Firemen's Festival is what it's called. And I thought going into it, it was just a parade. People are like, oh, you going to go to the Firemen's Parade? And like, oh, it's a parade. You've seen one, you've seen them all, but it's a festival. So they had food trucks set up, like rides and things too, right there in downtown Johnstown. So it was a pretty big deal. But one of the cool opportunities we had as a church was, if you're not aware, we have a food bank in Johnstown. Some of you listening might not be aware of that, but we have a food bank, and it's really well done, really reaches a lot of people. Something like 40 to 50 families every week come through the food bank on average. But one of the cool things that we did for the Firemen's Parade was represent the food bank. So the leadership of the food bank, they're very passionate about what they do. And serving and being involved. And so a few of them came up and said, hey, we wanted to have a float in the parade. And I said, well, that's great. Let me know what you need help with. And they pretty much just took it and ran with it and said, well, we've got it all covered. And so there were some pictures floating out there on social media. If you didn't see, it was pretty neat to see. They had a float all decorated with food items and different things like that.
And I think we had some walking vegetables and stuff like that.
It was not just decorations. It was costumes were involved.
Yes.
And so it was pretty cool. Everyone all this took place on that really hot stretch that we had, like the 98 every day. So that's what I told them about going into. I said, make sure everyone stays hydrated. We don't need any accidents. Because at my last church, we were involved in one of the parades, and there's the most recent one that I was part of. It's like there was an accident, and like, oh, we don't need that. We don't need that. We don't need that kind of attention. And so stay hydrated. But yeah, everything I heard back from those that were involved, it was great. They
were passing out candy.
Yeah, passing out candy, and not only that. One of the ladies, Mima, had put together these pretty cool cards that were front and back, just advertising for the food bank and the church. And so people were walking alongside the float and just interacting with people who were watching the parade, passing those cards out, just telling them, hey, this is who we are, what we do. And it was a good representation of the heart that's there in the church. And it was good.
And we've had a couple mailers that have gone out. You mentioned it, that have gone out to the community. And Pastor Rob was able to come up. He was here in Gahanna during first service and then took off real quickly so that he could be part of the service up in Johnstown at 10:45 this past Sunday. And he just happened to be, he was kind of floating back and forth between the balcony and where we have the tech stuff and down on the main floor. And then eventually he was outside running a drone trying to get some footage.
Yeah, I was up there doing announcements. So what is Pastor Rob doing out by the road?
But what was cool about that, he had a story. I'll steal it and go ahead and share it.
Yeah, please.
So there was somebody kind of, I don't know if they were on the sidewalk or in the parking lot or what, but he said, "Hey, I'm looking for the Baptist church that's meeting in the Catholic church now." And Rob goes, "Well, we don't have that, but we got a Nazarene church that we're doing our grand opening." And he's like, "I'm coming in," and so he came in and I think that was a result of the mailer. Well.
Very well could have been, but there was no. I don't know where that came from. That wasn't on the mailer, but hey, he showed up and part of the service.
So it was great to see, and I was so encouraged. Of course, one thought that was going through my head was like, okay, so we're either going to have to squeeze some more chairs in here, or we're going to have to talk about a second service a lot sooner than any of us thought, and that's a wonderful problem to have to be contemplating at this point.
That has always been in the back of my head because it's a one room building.
Yeah.
So space is limited. And just in my mind, I thought, well, maybe by the end of the year, and maybe around Christmas time, you start exploring, or maybe right around the new year. But like you said,
might be September.
It might be a little sooner than that. So, which is great, and looking forward to that when that happens.
So, part of what you had talked about is that you want to make sure that we continue to stay outward focused and that we're trying to reach into the community.
Yep.
And so, moving forward now. You've contemplated some things that you would like to see happen. So give us a little bit of insight as to where you might be going with that.
Yeah. So we would love, just in our brainstorming, we came up with, if we could do one thing every month of being intentional about being in the community somehow, we think that would be doable. And just a quick side note, years ago at Mount Vernon, one of my professors, we were talking about the church and how a lot of times he posed this question: if your church was no longer in existence, would your community miss you? Like, would your community even notice? Or would just the people of your church not have a place to go? And that has really resonated with 10 years later. I still think about that. Would the community miss your church? And so we want to be a presence that is making an impact in such a way that, wow, if Shepherd Church, the Johnstown campus, wasn't there, would people notice? And so for that to happen, you have to be in the community, involved. And so we want to do that in creative ways, simple ways. So a few of the things that we came up with, we would love to do here in August, right before school starts, giving away haircuts. That's a creative way that we can make a difference, communicate the love of God, but also be a blessing to the community. Haircuts aren't cheap.
Right.
And so for families that have 3, 4, 5, 6 kids, they might not be able to afford something like that. So if we can partner with local stylists and say, hey, we want to be a blessing to families this way, and not only that, be a blessing financially, but having a haircut going back to school, if you don't normally get one, it can add confidence. It can add, self-esteem to a kid, and it'd just be a great opportunity. So that's what we'd love to do here, beginning part of August.
That would be great. Yeah. I can almost see, the beauty of the sanctuary. It's set up with chairs, so we can move those around, and it could become a beauty salon for a day if needed, or wherever we decide to have that. But we'll just go ahead and make the call out now. If you are a licensed beautician or a barber, or if you know someone, you might be thinking, I never realized I could use this talent, this gift, in a way to reach out for Christ. And this is a great opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
So did you want to speak to any other ones that we might have upcoming that people could be part of?
Just a few things that we're brainstorming. At some point, we would like to do something with the food bank and being even more in the community. One idea that was shared by a pastor friend was what they did in their community was they passed out paper bags with item lists stapled to it. And they would drop those off at every porch, like every doorstep, and said, we'll be back in 1 week. Here's a list of items. If you're able to fill this bag with some of these items, we'll be back to pick those up, and it will be a blessing to the food bank. And that we would like to do that in Johnstown. I think it would be great to expose people, because there's still a lot of people that don't even know that the food bank
exists. Yeah.
I mean, most, if not all, the people that come through there, it's word of mouth. People find out by telling, which is a great, effective way to get things out there. But still, being able to just bring awareness to with the community that there is a food bank. Here's when it takes place, what we do, and you can be involved in it. That's great, because I think people want to make a difference. Believers or not, people want to make a difference. People, I think, generally want to do good. And if the church can come alongside and say, here's how you can do that, what a great witness and opportunity to build bridges. I mean, just be able to share the gospel, maybe not at first in words, but in actions. And
well, we go back to our mission statement. It's helping people take their next step toward Jesus. And maybe their next step is just engaging enough to be generous and to think outside themselves. And then perhaps that progresses to something else where they're like, maybe I should check this church out, or maybe I should talk to somebody. So I think, that's a wonderful way to incorporate the community and to allow them to be part of this good effort, this godly effort, before they even maybe have a full understanding. And certainly the way we've seen God act in our own lives as well. He kind of reaches us at that point. So if you could tell us, as people are listening, and by the way, if anything that we've been talking about and you're like, hey, I think I might want to be a part of that, or I've got some idea that I might want to run past, feel free to email us at podcast@shepnaz.org.
Please.
And reach out to us and let us know that you'd want to be a part, or somehow that you might want to participate. But also, if you could tell us, Pastor, is where do you feel like the prayer concerns are right now that people can be lifting up as we're looking at the ministry of the Johnstown campus?
Yeah, for sure. A couple areas that jump out in my personal prayers, and we're actually getting ready to start Ignite, the once a month prayer gathering in Johnstown. We're going to be doing those there, but we want to emphasize that the community would be receptive, that people's hearts would be softened to hear and to respond, and also that we as a church would have a burden, that we would have a heart for the lost, that we would see our involvement in that, and that God wants us to partner with Him in the work. Part of our theological understanding is that God's already at work in people's lives through His prevenient grace, and what He does is invites us into that work.
Right.
So us having the heart for that, the burden, the ears and the eyes to see and hear just what God is doing in the world, and then how we can be involved in that. Those are my two prayers anyway, that the community would be receptive. It's a small community. I know it might not be for a long time, much longer anyway, but it's very similar to areas I grew up in. With that comes, you kind of heard everything. You've kind of
sure.
gotten, you believe what you believe, and it's tough to come off of that. And so it's kind of a tough, it can be a tough situation when you're in that kind of tight-knit, close community of being able to speak into people think, oh, I've seen churches. So them being receptive to God, and then for us as a church to see our involvement, 2 prayers of mine.
Amen. All right. Well, we're going to encourage all of you that are listening to seek the Lord on how you can be involved, either at the Johnstown campus or just in your day-to-day ministry, of how you can reach out and join God in the work that He's already doing. Also, you can check out everything that's going on at the church by going to shepnaz.org. We encourage you to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. We hope that this has been a challenge to you and that you'll share it with a friend and do all those likes and comments and things that help us get the word out. For Pastor Nick, I'm Joe. Have a great day. This podcast is a production of the Shepherd Church of the Nazarene, Gahanna, Ohio. Email to podcast@shepnaz.org and let us know what you think.